Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredible story behind one of the most ambitious documents ever written, the Constitution of India.
So let's just stop and think for a second about the monumental, almost impossible task facing India's founders back in 1947. You've got a brand new country, still reeling from the trauma of partition, and you have to create a single rule book for a nation of staggering diversity. We're talking hundreds of languages, all the world's major religions, countless different cultures. Seriously, how do you write one document that can unite a population that vast and that varied?
Well, their answer was to go big. They decided to create the world's longest written constitution. And look, this wasn't just about being long-winded. It was a deliberate, strategic choice. They knew they weren't just writing a simple mission statement. They were building a detailed, explicit blueprint that could handle the enormous complexities of the new nation. And, crucially, protect the rights of every single person and every single minority group.
Okay, so where do you even start with a project that huge? Well, they didn't try to reinvent the wheel. Instead, they looked outwards. They became students of the world, studying the playbooks of other democracies to see what worked, and maybe more importantly, what didn't.
And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who is really the chief architect of the Constitution, put it perfectly. He said they were basically ransacking all the known constitutions of the world. But the key here is that the idea wasn't to just copy-paste, right? It was to learn, to take the best ideas and adapt them, and also to see where other countries had made mistakes, so they could forge something that was uniquely suited for India's own needs.
And this slide really shows you that global shopping spree in action. From the UK, they took the parliamentary system. Why? Well, because it was a structure they already knew and had experience with. From the US, they borrowed the powerful idea of fundamental rights that could actually be enforced by a court, a direct response to having those rights denied under colonial rule. Then you have Ireland, which inspired these guiding principles for the state, pushing it towards social and economic justice. And from Canada, they got the model for a federation with a strong central government, which they saw as absolutely essential to hold the new country together.
All right, so borrowing all these great ideas from around the world is one thing, but putting them all together created a whole new challenge. How do you balance power and unity? How do you create a strong nation without totally crushing all the unique regional identities in a country as diverse as India?
So, the framers went with what's called a federal system. All that means is that power is shared between the central government and the individual states. It's a pretty common model for democracies, but, and this is a big but, India's version has this really unique twist, one that was designed specifically to prevent the country from ever breaking apart.
So while the states have their own powers to govern, the Constitution has this clear bias. It leans towards a strong central government. This was a very deliberate choice, born directly out of the trauma of partition. You see this unitary bias in things like having a single constitution for the entire country, one single Indian citizenship for everyone, and maybe most critically, the fact that states have absolutely no right to leave the Union. The number one goal was unity.
But being strong isn't enough, right? A great design also has to be able to adapt. So how did India's founders make sure their creation could actually evolve with the country and not just become some historical relic?
When you look at constitutions around the world, they usually fall into one of two buckets. They're either rigid, like in the USA, where changing the constitution is incredibly difficult, or they're flexible, like in the UK, where it can be changed much more easily. India's founders had to pick a path.
And Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first prime minister, had this really powerful way of looking at it. He argued that if you make the Constitution too rigid, too permanent, you essentially stop the nation's growth. He saw the nation as a living, breathing thing, and its rulebook needed to be able to breathe and grow along with it.
So what did they do? You guess it, they created another unique blend. It's kind of like a building with a super strong steel foundation that you can't touch, but the internal walls can be moved around whenever you need to. The core principles of the Constitution, things like your fundamental rights and the federal structure, that's the steel foundation. It's rigid and really hard to amend. But other, more day-to-day provisions can be changed much more easily by Parliament.
Okay, so that's the theory, a blend of rigid and flexible. But how has that actually worked out in the real world? Let's take a look at what's happened over the last 70-plus years.
Well, for one thing, the Constitution has grown a lot. It started with 395 articles and now has over 470. But this isn't just paperwork piling up. Every one of those new articles reflects the country grappling with new issues, new challenges, and evolving its laws to meet the changing needs of its people.
And that growth comes from this number, over 105 amendments since 1950. Think about that. Each one of those amendments is a story of national debate and adaptation. For instance, the 61st Amendment back in 1989 lowered the voting age from 21 down to 18, instantly giving millions of young people a voice in their democracy. It's living proof that this document is anything but static.
And that really gets to the heart of it all. The Indian Constitution was never supposed to be some dusty old document in a museum, to be admired from behind glass. No, it was designed from day one to be a dynamic, working framework, something to be argued over, adapted, and built upon to serve the needs of over 1 billion people.
Which brings us to a final really big question for today. After steering India through more than 7 decades of just unimaginable change, this constitution is still evolving. So the real question for the future isn't if this grand design will change again, but how. How will this foundational rulebook adapt to meet the profound challenges and the incredible opportunities that are still ahead for the world's largest democracy?